Thanks for joining CBC Rewind, where we sit down with Pastor Gary as he dives deeper into his sermon.
All right, CBC, thank you for tuning in today. Today we have Pastor Gary with us. How are you today?
I'm well, Tyler.
Today we're going to be discussing last week's sermon entitled No More Smothering the Fire. And this is the first sermon in the new series called Holy Fire.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question is just what was the inspiration behind this new series?
Well, two things. Like the Bible is uses a lot of things that I guess we're familiar with to elaborate upon and help us to experience that which we're not familiar with. Okay? So there are things of God that we can't really fully understand, so God's nice enough to give us things that we do understand to kind of help us. And he'll use things in culture like weddings, customs, holidays, feasts, lambs, matches, fire, oil, water, gold, silver, bronze, brass. So tangible things or help us understand the nature and the essence of God. So fire is one of them. And fired, we use that term. We get fired up, or man, that guy's got the fire of God in his belly, something like that. I just sense that our whole culture, our whole nation, well, in a lot of respects, the whole world's kind of like rebooting, and it's time to fire up the engine again after what we've been through and what some nations are still going through. It's a very difficult time for some. Well, I don't think we fully realize that. I just got off the phone realizing that a family in Nepal, both parents, 4 children died of the COVID virus, leaving 1 child behind. So, you can imagine. Yeah. Or maybe not imagine. So I think we need fire. Fire sound good to me. I feel like the Lord was just saying fire to me. And in addition to that, I think we as a staff, a ministry team, got together and we sought the Lord and came up with this word, inspire, that you're seeing more and more on things in the church and on people's T-shirts, coffee mugs, and bags and such. What's the point? The point is, when you come to church and you encounter God and God's people and God's word, something ought to inspire you to do, to think, to act, to love, to do something. So I think fire and inspiration go together, and I put them together and just started a new series, Holy Fire.
And you had mentioned last Sunday about kind of being involved in more than just one Sunday. You had mentioned be there for the season.
Yeah, if you really think about it, the way we interact with and even expect things of God is, I get why it is. We're like into instant gratification, and we're used to having things in our lives as quick as we want them. So I think we pare God down to a day of the week or something, when in reality his nature is to work in seasons. He's much more patient than we are. And he's a seed planter and waterer and brings light, and then he harvests. And he goes through a process. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 talks about seasons. Time to plant, time to pull up, time to mourn, time to dance, time to laugh, time to tear down. So God does things in seasons, and we sometimes, if we really want to interact with him and experience him the way he wants us to, we need to get off this, I'm going to drop by the church this Sunday or try another church next Sunday. Plant yourself, man. Let's get after it. This is my point. Give God a season of time where you can focus in, where you can really drill down and get some depth out of him, because he's very deep. Mm-hmm. He's got what we need. Anyway, so that's that thing about, it's like hunker down. Like you're not a Georgia fan, are you? I'm going to make you a Georgia fan. Hunker down. That's what they say at Georgia football game. Hunker down means like you're in it to win it, so stay put between the hedges here. We're going to get it done. Mm-hmm. But it's not like one quarter or one and out. It's the full game. So go through it,
I think that also we're reading that book that talks about not living Sunday to Sunday. And so how do you live your life from during the week, I guess? And so if you're thinking in seasons, that helps that. Or me personally, I feel like that helps not relying on Sunday to be like your God's day. It's like every day should be God's day.
Yeah, well, look at creation. It took a week, right?
Yeah.
Well, why? Why not just do it in a day?
Yeah.
Is God not capable of that? No, he's sequential. He's systematic. He's chronological. He builds upon things. And he takes time, more time than I think we give him or we think we have. So, yeah, that's why.
All right. So let's see. You asked a question last week of how do we get beyond spiritual fatigue? And you mentioned that we need to get fire exposed to the air. And so my question is, what exactly is the air you're referring to?
All right, well, let's define spiritual fatigue, like burnout, or my walk's not where it should be. You hear people say that, or I'm just lethargic, just kind of heavy. Things are heavy. Well, that's usually a combination of things. When you have a relationship in your life where there's something between you and the other person that's awkward, or you haven't dealt with it yet, or you just don't feel like talking, the relationship gets strained. Well, ask yourself this question: what contributed to the strain, to the separation? And oftentimes in a relationship with God, those same things exist, just like our friendships. Don't spend as much time together. Don't talk as often enough. Don't listen as much as we. Don't communicate well. Don't share at deeper levels of intimacy. And after a while, the relationship gets heavy, right? Heavy. Well, this poor guy Jeremiah, man, what a calling this guy had. The weeping prophet. He's got all this pressure laid to bear upon him from the culture, from these goofy Israelites who couldn't do what they're supposed to do. And he's the guy that goes around telling them they're doing everything wrong. So his job is to basically be a bummer as a prophet. And he's taken a lot of heat, a lot of animosity, and he's still got the fire in him, but he's trying to hold it back. He's actually trying to hold back God from doing something in his life because it was causing him such resistance. So I can see how things got bad for him. I can see how he got depressed. It makes sense to me. But at the same time, my point is that fire shut up in his bones that we talked about in Jeremiah 20, verse 9. Any fire shut up anywhere needs air, as you say. So what's that air? Well, the first thing that breathes life into our walk, new and afresh, is worship. If you skip over worship, you've skipped over the essential, the non-negotiable, the have to have. So my contention is that with all that we've been through in our culture, and sometimes not everybody, it's never everybody, okay, but a lot of people maybe need to get fired up a little bit. Not in some emotional, fleshy sense, but in a spiritual sense. And to do that, we stop magnifying the things that smolder the fire, suffocate it, and we start magnifying the one who's going to breathe life into it. And that's worship. That's God. So we magnify him. And I've had a good week in that regard because I've spent time worshiping him. I'm listening to my own sermon, so I'm putting it in action. And I know that if people do that flame will intensify. I'm confident of that because God honors that kind of. First of all, he honors obedience to him. And let's take it a step further, because this isn't said often enough. And maybe it should be. This has nothing to do with Gary Hewins. But if you go to a church and you listen to a message and you're asked to do something by a spiritual leader that God put there, do it. It's in your best interest, right? Because that's what God blesses. So soon as I say, as a pastor, I say, listen, I'd really sense the Lord's calling us to magnify him more in our everyday walk, like you say, Monday through Sunday. Do that. Do that. Mm-hmm. Don't do it begrudgingly, but do it. And what'll happen is God will intensify that flame. If he wasn't going to, he's going to do it now that I said it, okay? Because he's going to honor the ministry that he's placed here. So That's an important thing. We don't talk about that often enough. I learned this when I was younger in my walk, to submit to authority like that. And of course it's got to be biblical, come on. But to call a church to fast or to call a church to worship, we need to do that. Like, we need to put that into action. That's not like some casual thing. And I think it's even an expeditious thing here. I think there's an urgency to that here right now in our church, that God's calling us to that. So I don't know. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
There's your air, there's your oxygen.
Yeah. All right. So next we actually have a question from a congregant this week.
Okay.
This one asks, how do you realize that your walk is weakened before we are too far gone? And then I kind of added on to that. Going alongside this, you mentioned that nothing should ever eclipse the supremacy of Christ. And whatever you focus on in life will enlarge.
Sure.
And so if we focus on it long enough and it becomes more important than Christ, how do we come to realize that?
You come to realize it in a lot of ways. Listen to yourself. Okay? Out of the condition of your heart is revealed by what comes out of your mouth. Jesus said, out of the abundance of your heart, the mouth speaks. Okay? Is what you're speaking, and I would add to that what you're thinking. If you're in tune with, and Christ is in you and quite active and stirring you and opening up opportunities to minister, there's going to be a couple things that you can pretty much count on. Number one, there's going to be a flow. There's going to be a flow of something out of you into other people's lives. Wisdom, encouragement, love, compassion, some fruit of the Spirit is flowing.
And we talked about that.
We talked about that before.
Ago, yeah.
So look for flow. The second thing is listen to what comes out of your mouth. And I'm going to give you this to think about. Think of pre-plant, okay? Pre-plant, Preplant, pre-plant. If we are strong in our walk, we're going to have on our mind, on our hearts, and on our mouth, and in our actions, things that are praiseworthy, righteous, and excellent, perfect, lovely, admirable, noble, and true. Pre-plant. Comes out of Philippians. This is evidence of a flow of the Lord in your life. Stagnation leads to selfishness, complaining, divisiveness, immaturity, attention-getting behavior, even jealousy and some insecurity, things that we don't like, right? Mm-hmm. Even depression. So a vibrant walk has flow, is given away by the speech, and is a reflection of thoughts. Do we have the mind of Christ? Praiseworthy, righteous, excellent, perfect, lovely, admirable, noble, and true. That's indications. Excitement about and a thirst for the word. Like, you want to get in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Not have to. Not counting how many times you've done it in a row. We're not. We got to get rid of that. Okay, mm-hmm. we have to want to be together in a relationship. So those are the things that are indicators. If those things aren't present, then there's have to, or you're operating in the flesh. It's in your own ability. You're not really praying much, or when you do, it's out of obligation. That kind of thing. The same way you would look at, how is our relationship with XYZ person not what it could be or not what it used to be? Whatever is contributing to that is probably contributing to a smoldering relationship with Christ on the decline. Mm-hmm. Does that help you?
Yeah. All right. Well, this week we'll be continuing the Holy Fire series, so what can we be expecting?
We're in Jeremiah again, chapter 23, verse 29. His word is like a fire. His word is like a fire and a hammer that breaks the rock to pieces. It's a powerful visual of a flame and a hammer. Picture a prisoner in a labor camp swinging a sledgehammer down, making little rocks out of big rocks, sweat off his brow, exhausted, pounding it. And he says, my word is like a fire and like a rock that, or like a hammer that breaks a rock to pieces. And if his word's like a fire, how so? What does that mean to us? So we've looked at worship as the oxygen that intensifies the flame, and then the word keeps it burning. And so does worship. It's like you're not going to have what you might imagine you can have in Christ apart from the word. And I got more and more people coming to me more and more often talking about how they went to XYZ church or what. So many churches now, in the state of the churches, there's so little of the word being preached. And so if Jeremiah's right, and he is, the absence of the word is the absence of fire. And the absence of that is the big rocks that need to be broken up. Big strongholds, big obstacles, big things that are cumbersome and awkward we can't deal with in life. We need to break them down. And the word does that.
All right. Well, that about does it for today.
That does it, man. I'm inspired. Good work.
Yeah,
you are really, you're doing a great job with the interviews.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
When
it.
you went to college, the second class, did you picture yourself doing this?
Absolutely not.
Did you picture yourself having to talk to anybody at any time?
I usually try not to.
Okay, man. Well, good. If you stick around here long enough, we'll stretch you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next week for another CBC Rewind.
All right. Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to email Gary your questions at askgary@cbchighlands.com.